Focus up, nerds. It's time to stack those 60s. Welcome back to another episode of the... I'm already falling to pieces. I am jet lagged out of my mind. I got off a plane about 3 hours ago. I couldn't even get through the intro. My name's Riley. I'm joined by Toffel. Toffel, also jet lagged out of his mind after returning from Pro Tour Dominaria. Toffel, how are you going?
Holding on the best I can.
Just barely. You were just telling me how you went to sleep yesterday at 12 noon and then didn't wake up until 4 a.m.
It's still not the truth, but...
It took, I heard the numbers 12 and 4, and I assumed that's how long you slept because there's no other reason. And fresh as a daisy, ladies and gentlemen, on a sun-kissed meadow, it is Jamin Kauf.
Good morning.
Yeah. What a lovely morning we all had with lots of sleep. Yeah.
It's easy for some.
A nice breakfast.
Whatever. I don't want to hear about it. So we are going to look. We've got a lot to cover. We've got a lot of ground to cover, and I'm going to try to hold this broken air conditioner together for at least a couple more minutes to get through this. A couple more minutes. That's all I think I've got in me. Bloody hell. Anyway, Brawl's back on the menu. Brawl is back on the menu. It's been reinstalled as a Magic Online format. And Jamin, you've been across it. I know we've been busy with the Pro Tour, Toffel and I, but Jamin, you've got a lot to talk about this week with Brawl returning.
You know, some of you focus on the less important formats like Standard for the Pro Tour. Some of us do the real work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to hear all about that this week, of course. But while Toffel and I were wasting our time over in Richmond, Virginia with, yes, silly things like the Pro Tour, well, a lot of stories emerged from that as well. So let's get across them. It's time for the catch-up. It's time for the catch-up. So the Pro Tour was a lot of fun. It almost always is. Got to catch up with a fair few people, and obviously last week's episode came live from the German testing house. How did the Germans end up faring? All the people you tested with over the weekend, Toffel?
I'd say it was a pretty good outcome for us. So we were 10 people, 8 of us playing mono red and 2 mono green. 8 of us advanced to day 2. 2 of us didn't. You can make it like a slide.
Is there a pattern that's going to emerge here?
Yeah, so we figured out that mono red was just by far the best deck, and by far mean not like really a lot of percentages, but it was fairly obvious that it was a few percentages ahead, especially against red-black. And we expect a lot of black-red, as there were. And yeah, so we all made day 2. One of us finished like 30s or something, and some decent pro point finishes. So I guess...
Yeah, nice one.
Yeah, so I guess all in all, the team can be pretty proud.
Also, the Card Market Pro team finished in the top 16, right?
Yeah, and therefore is qualified for the next Pro Tour.
Woo!
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Like, that's really, really, really good. Congrats, dude.
Yeah, also... Now I'm missing 3 points for gold, which is...
Oh, wow. Is it that close?
Yeah, I got 6. Next Pro Tour I will get 3. Then I'm at 32. 35 is gold. And it's a bit complicated because I already filled all my GP slots with 2s.
Oh, so you actually have to top your least good GP result.
So you have to get 5 points at a GP.
Yeah, I actually have to be semi-finalist or something, which is...
Easy.
It's tough,
I'll
but...
be making fun of you in the semi-finals this weekend in Copenhagen, Tom.
you can read it there. No, yeah, I've been very, very happy with also the team dynamics. The only thing I really, 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 really didn't like was the American food, because it's...
Like the best food in the world and you have no taste? Oh my goodness. I had being back in Scotland, obviously Scottish food is fantastic because they will basically deep fry anything you want from pizza to Mars bars. But Megan and I went to like every fast food chain that we could. Everyone that we saw, we just snapped it off, went in there and we ate ourselves silly. It was amazing. It was incredible. I have a new favorite fast food chain. It's called Zaxby's. I went there in Charlottesville when I was visiting Monticello, and oh my goodness, it was just the best. I love American food. It is maybe not the greatest thing about the country. There are lots of fantastic things about America, but eating there was just one of the highest privileges and joys.
I'm pretty sure you should maybe try like a sponsorship deal for one of those companies.
Stacking Sixties brought to you by Zaxby's, the chicken sandwich.
I think that's not that bad. Like,
Well, we can reach out to some corporate partners and see how things go. I had a pretty good Pro Tour as well, but more or less all of the horses that I had in the race did really well. Not only a lot of the Germans making day 2, but nearly all of the Australians also made day 2, so it was really good for them as well. And one of my very good Scottish mates, Danny Anderson, made a top 16 appearance. So this guy has catapulted himself towards the Scottish captaincy. He's snagged $5,000 and five pro points as well. And considering his previous Pro Tour performance, his debut was 0-5 drop. He did pretty bloody well this weekend. He also was one of the lowest ELO ranked players in the world going into the Pro Tour, and
pretty sure
he had an ELO. He had an ELO of 1337.
Yeah.
And he's now pushing 1700 after a huge performance. So really well done, Danny. I live streamed one of his matches on the floor to our Facebook group.
Nice.
And it was
cool.
It was real. I couldn't commentate obviously, but it was so cool. So well done, Danny.
Yeah, I also saw one of his games live.
You played against him.
Oh yeah, in round 3 when you crushed him.
My deck was out of the world. Like, I had 4 journey mages and a lot of cheap wizards.
Actually, you had 6 journey mages, I think.
I had 6 journey mages?
2 of them were red. The 3-mana 3/2s are also journey mages.
No.
G2 journey mage?
They are called journey mages.
Oh, okay, alright. So I apparently had 4 real journey mages. And it's, like, he had a Multani, which is not that good in blocking in hand. Or it just doesn't do anything.
It doesn't block out of hand, is what you're saying.
Yeah, it doesn't block out of the hand zone, no.
No, but like, we had just to be fair, like, we had a draft pool with PV, with Shota, with Arilax, so we had 3 Pro Tour champions. And we also had, I think, at least 2 other very good players, and we met in the finals, which I guess was pretty lucky, I guess, but it was a really nice feeling, and
it was very good for me as well because because both of you were teasing me like, which one of your children do you love the most in that situation. It was kind of a situation like no matter who won, I kind of lost because I wanted obviously both of you to make a deep run. But I don't think the result for Danny was fantastic, and if you're happy with your performance, and I didn't realize you were so close to Cold 2. Congratulations, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so it was amazing, and he was like, you can also feel that's one of the biggest things, right? When you play against Danny, he's just full of joy and full of excitement. I've played against other players, also some pros who were a bit cold, like a bit like professional routine, and it's like, I cast this and that and nice game, whatever. But here you can feel like he's having fun. He's very glad to be here, and and it's just so deserved and so happy. Yeah,
it's really good. It's a shame that the $5,000 won't last very long because I understand there was also a casino not too far away from the venue. So, but all the same, he's off to GP Vegas as well with the rest of the boys. I unfortunately can't go, but all the rest of my mates here. And so that's the end of that money. Anyway, that was my weekend and your weekend, Toffel. I think it's time for us to talk more in depth about Jamin's weekend, and I guess the best way to do that is to get into today's show and talk about this newly revitalized Brawl format. So, Jamin, as you mentioned, as in Toffel and I, have been mucking around and focusing on less important things while you've been holding down the fort back at home and keeping an eye on the Brawl format. It's come back to Magic Online after a brief break while they were obviously implementing all of the changes that were made, a couple of weeks ago. So, talk us through it, Jamin. What's been going on now that Brawl's back on the market?
All right, it's awesome. It's exactly what I envisioned. It's just great fun to play. So the first thing I did obviously was like try out the stuff that we mentioned on the podcast, and as I said last week, I was expecting Chandra to be like a huge player, so I played that. And 2 leagues into the game, into the new format, I snagged my first trophy with it. So yeah,
GG.
Chandra's really good. Chandra turns out to be a great commander. The mono red deck is superb.
Now, my question here for you when it comes to Chandra is, do you want me to mention the fact that you got 3 trophies with it because you've written that and bolded it and underlined it in the show notes? So was that something that you were going to bring up, or was I supposed to do that to make you seem really good?
I have put it into the show notes, but I haven't bolded it or underlined it.
Oh, he's just undone it. He's just quickly undone it now, ladies and gentlemen. It was in like 72-point font as well. He really was. It was like highlighted with yellow. It's like a blinking GIF sort of thing on like a GeoCities sort of website from years ago. Anyway, look, suffice to say, you've been crushing it with mono red.
Yeah, like I've played lots of Chandras, but my trophy rate was above average with her, and it's just a great deck. There's only one adjustment I made to the list, which was cutting one of the cards for a magma spray, because interacting with the board cheaply is just very, very good. The other deck we mentioned last week in particular is the Scarab God. And I took the list we built and I put in like 1 to 2 of the maybes, because mono red enjoys a huge popularity currently in the leagues. And I took it into the leagues and it failed horribly. At least in my hands it did. I don't know if other people had more success with it. But it couldn't stand up to the aggressive draws of mono red. And then against Teferi, you're kind of far behind because you play way fewer counterspells and lots of your removal is dead, and it just felt terrible. I gave up after 2 leagues.
Do we think more research is required? I mean, you've sort of said that it's not really the deck, your deck of choice. Toffel, are you still expecting different results with the Scarab God?
I don't know. Maybe.
Doesn't sound very optimistic there, my friend.
I mean, if he feels like this, there's probably a very high amount of reasonability behind it. I can also assume that he just played with it, conceded 3 games, and said, "Okay,
yeah.
it's just
it's terrible. It must be really bad." You mean okay? I want to get further into the decks that you sort of tested out, but have you got some sort of broad, I don't know, conclusions or some broad advice that you can give to us about the Brawl format? You've said that it's sort of very open, and there are a lot of different decks at play, even if mono red is seeing a fair bit of spotlight. What's the sort of the general picture you can paint of us for the Brawl format here?
We've said it like a million times now on this podcast. Like, don't expect to do like the 6-7 mana things, right? Stay low to the ground and you'll have success. Like, once you've built a board, then you can get to the sweetness maybe. But yeah, prioritize efficiency over the sweetness of 7 and 8 drops. Yeah, but that's my general advice. Just make sure that you do stuff on the early turns, and then that gives you a chance against the aggressive decks, and it gives you a chance to protect your precious 20 life.
So what's actually your general advice?
My actual general advice right now would probably be Huatli. She's pretty sweet.
Huatli?
Yeah.
Man. Whew.
Yeah, I actually tried it out just because Toffel mentioned it.
And now I'm really excited. Tell me more about my take.
Yeah, tell us more about this Huatli. Is this the Huatli, the green white or the red white?
It's the green white. Huatli,
okay, so Radiant Champion.
Yeah. She's the 4 mana 3 loyalty planeswalker that like ticks up a lot and then either pumps one of your creatures or generates an emblem that basically does the glimpse of nature thing. And I built this basically first to beat mono red, or like to compete with mono red, because green white can go very wide, right?
Green wide?
Yeah, green wide.
Green wide. Green so wide that you need 2 rows on Magic Online.
No, that actually hasn't happened to me yet with this.
You haven't got that far?
I haven't got that far. All of my opponents conceded before I did that.
You're such a scrub.
I mean, if you have 2 rows, Huatli also pumps for like 20 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this, like, I first built an actual green-white deck, but that doesn't work out. Like, playing 2 colors in this format in a low-to-the-ground deck just doesn't work.
So
mana
you
bases
played
are
white?
Yeah, I basically played mono-white, splashing green for some of the good cards.
Oh.
You can look at the list. We hopefully have the list in the show notes. And then,
what do you mean, hopefully? You mean, I'm a professional. It's always there. It's always on time, and the links always lead to the right deck lists. You certainly don't get weekly complaints on Twitter saying, hey, I shouldn't complain about the complaints because they're generally very kind. But it's like, hey, sorry, but the link in the show notes links to the deck list you talked about like 2 weeks ago.
It links to one of the restaurants from America.
Yeah, I wanted to see this sweet new Huatli list, but it's like the online delivery service for Zaxby's. I don't really know what's going on there.
Yeah, and the Galta list only refers to tax advisors.
Oh dear. But so it sounds like the format's then pretty open if we've got so many different lists available for play. If you're seeing Teferi, if you're seeing Huatli, we're seeing mono red lists. I mean, is Brawl still open enough that you can really experiment and try things out?
Yes, like I've been streaming a lot, and I haven't even gotten through all of the decks I want to play. And then we can still build new ones, and it's so easy because all the cards are so cheap. Oh, it's amazing. I love it. You can just switch cards in and out and try out stuff. Like the whole Huatli deck, the first one failed horribly, and you know what? I rebuilt the deck. Played more white, played more cards with evasion. We played like Eddy Trailhawk. That's the 2-mana 1/2 flyer that gives other creatures flying. And then the Huatli pump actually gets through, and then we play those lifelink creatures to fight against mono red. It just all works out, and if it doesn't work out, you just try again.
Back to the drawing board. Yeah, it sounds pretty sweet.
Wow, I wouldn't have thought that one of those hawks actually made like an impact on anything.
I wouldn't have expected it either, but like the evasion theme is actually quite good, I think, especially giving like lifelink creatures evasion against mono red, or giving other creatures evasion in general.
Or, like Adorned Pouncer.
Yeah, Adorned Pouncer. Jeez, if you give Adorned Pouncer flying and then pump the cat with Huatli, like you're attacking for lethal very quickly.
Yeah, it sounds. I just played a regular Brawl game and I got beat by this flying bird and a cat.
Yeah, I got beaten by a piece of draft chaff. Oh, who was it that beat you? Obviously, it was Jamin Kalf. Everyone knows if you get beaten by draft chaff, you're being beaten by Jamin. That's how he does. That's how we do. Jamin, what are some of the decks that are sort of succeeding at the moment? I know that we've had a bunch of leagues that have been burned through and that sort of stuff. So what are the lists that are continually putting up the 5-0s?
I can't say anything about decks continuously performing 5-0s because currently we only have one set of 5-0 league deck lists. But among those, obviously Karizev is a huge player. Most of the current Brawl players are on the 2-mana 1/3, although I still think it's inferior to Chandra. And then we also had stuff like Hapatra, the 2-mana 2/2 in green-black that synergizes with the -1/-1 counters, and Adelis as aggressive decks. As well
Adelis?
As...
Do you mean Adelis?
Come on!
No. Did you say hello?
Adelis, the Sindovind. Adelis. Actually, now you've making me second guess myself. I've got the official Wizards pronunciation guide.
No, it's Adelis.
Adelis.
Adelis the Cinderwind.
Adelis the Cinderwind.
Okay, why don't we rename this podcast to MTG Food and Pronunciation Stuff? Ideally, we can argue over how food is pronounced.
Welcome to another episode of Splitting Hairs with Jamin, Toffel, and Riley.
No, I have a better idea. Welcome to a new episode of Stacking Splitties.
Stacking Splitties, yeah, that's where we're headed. Anyway, okay, so the red blue Wizards deck is getting it done as well.
Yeah, so those are like the aggressive decks. I've seen Hazret, Adelis, and Hapatra.
Well, I was pretty happy with red blue Wizards, to be honest, because we're not arguing over that.
And also Admiral Beckett Brass has 5-0 the league, although I can't argue for that mana base.
Yeah, how is that happening? Toffel, we've talked about this deck already and how greedy it is to play 3 colors. Are you surprised to see Beckett Brass getting a 5-0?
Not really. Like, we already played Beckett Brass.
Oh, you were doing so well.
Yeah. I've got -2 on stamina.
Yeah. We're under some pretty heavy like wisdom and intelligence penalties right now.
So before the Brawl changes, we already played a Beckett Brass list, right? And it kind of worked out a bit. Like it was still struggling, but it was fine. Like there were a chance that this deck was quite okay. And I think you just have to commit to 2 colors and not play any heavy multicolor theme. And if you look at the deck list, there aren't many cards that are multiple colors. Like, they don't play the double black and the double reds. They only play a few double blues. And I think that's the way to go.
You can see all of these lists. We've posted a link to the results from this league. And you can go through and check out all the 5-0 lists that are there as part of that list. And I think that, I don't know, the Beckett Brass list doesn't convince me. And I'm going to have to see a little bit more from this because it does just kind of seem like a anemic beatdown deck, and the payoff isn't that fantastic for me. But what I'm really enjoying is the tribal component, because Ixalan, to be honest, the Ixalan block didn't bring a lot to competitive Magic outside of, a few individual powerhouses like Search for Azcanta, Field of Ruin, that sort of thing. But there was another sweet tribal list that, actually, on the face of it doesn't look like a tribal list because it's a white-black vampires deck that doesn't play a vampire as its commander, but this deck is also super, super sweet. I'm really pleased to see cards like Legion's Landing getting it done.
Yeah, so we were at the Pro Tour, right? So we couldn't do anything for Brawl. But since we want to stay up to date, my little working monkeys were busy with tuning and building deck lists.
It's like
how are the prices of bananas these days?
No, actually, it's like the typewriter, I would say.
Yeah, the thought experiment where you lock 100 monkeys with typewriters into a room forever, and at some point they're going to come up with like Shakespeare and stuff.
Okay, so
why is it 100? It's not 100 monkeys.
No, it doesn't matter. Like, how is it 100 for forever?
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
If it's 100
it could
or
also
1
be
or
53 monkeys.
Yeah, but why were it 100?
No, it doesn't have to be 100 or 50. It can be any number of monkeys.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, in this particular experiment, we don't have 100 monkeys locked in a room forever with typewriters. We've got them in a room with
Magic Online.
the latest version of Magic Online, playing different Brawl variants. And one of your little chimps put together a pretty spicy 5-0.
Yeah. He played, I think, 4 times 5-0. I think this.
Yeah, he's got 4 trophies by now.
Yeah. Like, then I know he has 1 list with the Angarth aggro, and I think 3 with the vampires. And he said that the vampires deck is very, very good. And
so talk to us about this, because the commander is Kambal, the console of allocation, which has seen some play all the way down to vintage, if you'll believe it, as a huge hoser of non-creature spells. Why are we playing with this fellow and not something like Vona? Or Elenda is a pretty bad commander, but surely there's a better way to support the vampire synergies here.
Well, to be honest, because they're just bad. Like, the Elendra the Dust Rose and Vona are just no relevant creatures. They're too late. They don't really have an impact. Elendra is very small, needs to be charged up, is very weak to removal. So
I would actually argue that Elendra is a good creature and the effect is fairly powerful. The problem is you have to put her into the graveyard for it to trigger. If you put her into the command zone, the effect won't trigger.
Yeah, but like, you can choose. Like, if she's 1/1, you can put her back in the command zone. If she's 4/4, I guess you can just get the creatures.
Ugh.
Another thing about Elendra is her name is actually Elenda, and you're thinking of Glenn Elendra Archmage from Lorwyn. But yep,
okay,
sure, go on.
So Elenda is kind of expensive and has some awkward issues with the commander role, so that's why we don't play Elenda. And did I do that right?
Yeah, well done.
Okay.
You really saved it there. You prevented any of us from looking like fools there.
So, and also Vona is.
So we're playing Kambal instead.
No, it's Kambal. Come on.
Excuse me.
Yeah, just
Stay reasonable.
Don't be silly.
Don't be ridiculous.
Yeah, let's try to. Don't be ridiculous. That's right.
No, Kambal is just very like the thing. I think the idea behind it is the creatures of the vampire deck are fairly good against other creature decks anyway, because there are a lot of creatures that have multiple effects that get buffed, that get supported. They're strong on their own. So you want to have something that is good against the various control decks or creature few decks, creature light decks, and Kambal is very powerful because at some point in the game you just play it and they need to remove it. It deals 2 damage and then maybe you have to do it again and they maybe have like 6 left and stuff. So I think it's more important from that angle because you don't need really playing Vona and then paying 7 life to remove something.
The other thing about this vampires list is, if we, you again can go through and look at this list, it's not actually really much of it. It does have cards with the subtype vampire, and it does have Legion's Lieutenant and everything, the rest of it. But it's also playing like Knight of Grace, Knight of Malice, Glintsleeve Siphoner. It's playing Angel of Invention. It's playing a bunch of cards that are just good black or white cards.
Yeah, if you really put it down to the vampire synergy, I think there's the Marvin Fane as a vampire synergy, and that's it. So combined with the Lord, there are 2 cards that really care for vampires, so it is not really a vampire list, but then just the good creatures are vampires, and that's why you just use them anyway. What I really like is the pair of knights, because we already found that they're very strong in standard. Against some specific decks, the Black Knight is very oppressive because it can't be seal away, it can't be Teferied, it can't be cast out, so it's kind of staying on the board except for some specific effects. And also the same goes for the White Knight, which sometimes also can just be very oppressive with the 3-power first strike. And I really like those creatures as an aggressive strategy, and they both get pumped by Kambal, which you can always path on turn 3, so you can be fairly aggressive with the deck.
Also, the deck rewards you for going wide in general, not only with vampires. Obviously, you have the Vampire Lord, but then you also have the Banalish Marshal, which is just a lord for all of your creatures. And also, Angel of Invention pumps your whole team once it enters the battlefield.
The thing about both of these cards, both Banalish Marshal and Angel of Invention, I think it's important to recognize that Banalish Marshal is not a 3-drop in this deck. There's so... I think the percentage of time that you're going to cast this guy on turn 3, given his triple white casting cost and the fact that you're playing 6 swamps, in addition to things like Ifnir Deadland and whatever else, Arch of Erazka, it'd be better to look at Banalish Marshal as a 4 or 5-drop, right?
Right.
I'm actually a bit worried about the mana base, but so far, when I've played it, it has worked out fairly well.
So apparently the mana base is good enough to play the Arc of Erazka?
Yeah, which is usually like this sort of, my mana's good, I'll throw in a free colorless land, it'll be fine.
Yeah, and apparently even with Banalish Marshal, and as you said, this can also be a fine 5 or 6 drop, you don't have many mana requirements as we saw in the Backup Brass list. So maybe you get away with 1 or 2 lands that are a bit on the downside part. And as we know from vampires, they're quite known to go on the token white side. So it's not that far away from getting the City's Blessing. What I find interesting is that apparently the main deck, Authority of the Consuls, is a good choice. That's a kind of a bit the concession to the metagame, saying that the mono red decks are fairly good. In general, it's an aggro-based metagame right now, meaning that usually the decks you're playing against try to kill you fast and not try to out-control you or outvalue you, as Jamin, you probably would agree on, I'd say.
Yeah, definitely. 100%.
So, main deck Authority is a very decent card against the Hazarevs and Karizevs and whatever creatures of the format.
Especially if you're applying pressure yourself. I mean, this is the mode that we don't really think about in Authority of the Consuls, because often it's played in the sideboard of control decks to contain opposing aggro decks, but it's really good to have potential blockers come into play tapped. So I like this card a lot in white decks. I might look to make some room for it in my super sweet Ariel Knight of Windgrace deck there, I think.
So it's still a card that you're down, right? It's not free, it's not a nice effect, and usually I wouldn't say the effect is worth a card. So if you, just maybe a general thing, if you look through deck lists that do well in the Magic Online leagues, in the Brawl Challenge in general, if you find a hint of those cards, it's a pretty good indicator that they have an assessment of the metagame and they want to attack with this direction. Like we had, for example, if you look at the list from Brawl and it plays Jace's Defeat, or if we go from the commander sides and they play Pyroblast or Hydroblast, you will get an idea of what people want to fight, and maybe also you will assess this way, because they were successful.
There's super useful signposts, cards like this, to give you an idea of the sort of cards that are being used to fight the format at large.
While I've been playing Chandra, someone let my Chandra resolve and then played Chandra's Defeat on it.
Ooh.
What?
Ouch.
That was pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, you got gotten, huh?
I did get gotten.
I want to zoom out a little bit now and talk, because we've talked about the successful decks, and just to sort of reiterate, we obviously have mono red at the top of this pile. We've got, as we said, Hapatra, Zakama, Gulta, Adeliz, Teferi, Hazaret, Beckett, Brass, and what have you, all those 5-0 lists there. But I want to get a broader picture of the decks you've been facing off against. Not necessarily the decks that are winning, but can you talk us through some of the decks that people are at least kind of experimenting with?
Oh, there are so many sweet decks. I've faced off against stuff like Ruff, giving your historic stuff flash. Although that deck didn't convince me, but I've played against it. There have been Lyra decks, lots of Shalai decks actually, like the green-white theme with Huatli, just like with the creature commander. Joyra decks, drawing cards with like Mox Amber and stuff. Tezzeret control decks, Nico Bolas control decks, Muldrotha mid-range decks, like those just outgrind everything. Kumena Merfolk aggro decks. There was even a Grand Warlord Rada list that like aims to like play green, red, big stuff, I guess. It's just everything. One spicy one I have tried out is 5-color Joda. Like you play all 5 colors, but obviously base green for the ramp. And then you play all the planeswalkers, kind of like a Super Friends deck, and all the legendary sorceries. It's so sweet.
Dude, did you see the Joda Brawl deck that was posted on Reddit?
No, I haven't.
It was so sweet. Terrible, like a really, really awful deck, but you've got to see it. So it's possible to build, right, a 5-color Joda deck using only old bordered cards.
Oh.
So it plays it plays no black cards at all, but it plays like Icy Manipulator, Syncopate. It plays like Skizzik and Thorn Elemental and Rootwaller and Llanowar Elves, and it also plays cards like Air Elemental and Inspiration and
just
other stuff like that.
For the sake of being white bordered.
That's
no, not even white bordered. Like these, you can play cards that were in alpha. Like you can play Serra Angel and Shivan Dragon.
I see.
It's super sweet.
That sounds horrible.
I mean, no, it's terrible. It's super bad because, of course, you have to only play basics as well if you want to keep it completely old bordered. And this guy's even gone and made like a proxied version of Joda. He's reprinted it in an old border as well to make it look like it's but it's super sweet. I'll put a link up in the show notes to this deck because it looks amazing. But I mean, imagine you were playing a deck that was a little bit more competitively viable.
No, absolute garbage.
All right, so you would have been better trying to resolve Aether Gliders and creeping moles and stalking tigers.
Maybe, yeah. Like we won one game, but that game we crushed.
I mean, there's no real upside of paying 5-colored mana, right? Like most of the spells in your deck cost 6 or 7.
Yeah, you're basically doing what I advocate not doing. Like you're playing all the sweet stuff.
I mean, once in a while you can try this.
Yeah, it was fun. Like trying it out, and then like the one game it really worked out. Like we had all the planeswalkers.
But then again, you realize losing is not fun, and then you just
yeah. Like if it was like if we measured like how much we were winning and losing, and then like we summed it up over all the games, I think we would have arrived at like about 0 just because we won that one game by so much. But unfortunately, that's not what Magic is about.
Like, were the other games close? Because, like, you're having fun when at least something works out and you have, like, a shot. But it feels like when you play Yoda, he just dies and you just never get to cast anything from your hand.
You don't actually have to use Yoda. Like, Yoda is
what
only
a good choice of a commander.
Well, it's only there for the colors. You do play, like, one Zakama as a random upside if you stick Yoda.
That sounds bad.
It is terrible, but if you want to give it a shot, we'll put the deck list up.
I like how it becomes Yoda as well with your J becoming a Y. It's very appropriate, seeing as he's this sort of all powerful mighty wizard figure that he's sort of there's a little and he's like super old as well. I don't know if you guys have read all the stories on mtgstory.com, but I've been enjoying reading them. Anyway, so yeah, it's sort of a nice little crossover event there between
playing all colors. You must. So, if I understand this correctly, we have a very broad metagame with lots of viable options, and you can play anything from aggro to mid-range to control to all the colors. Is that a trap? Is that What is that, an illusion, or is it actually like this? Like, do we feel certain that this will stay the same?
Well, the only thing that I remember saying, Jamin saying when he was addressing this point earlier on in the podcast is like when we're talking about sort of general advice or a general picture of the Brawl metagame is that as long as you've got a clear, consistent curve, and as long as you're getting on the battlefield early, or at least, you know, you're not leaving yourself dead to quick starts, then you kind of can play, whatever you want. Is that where we're at, you mean?
Yes, I think currently we're at that place. Maybe it will become obvious that one deck is just way superior, but currently I do not see that.
How much room is there for reacting to certain decks?
At least against mono red currently, I think there's lots of stuff to be done. You can go wide with creatures because they don't really, like, they have spot removal, they have efficient spot removal, but they don't deal with multiple things at the same time very well, especially since multiple things can then chump block like a Hazoret, or like, you know, tokens are very good at chump blocking Hazoret. Against other decks, I don't know, but currently there's no need to react to other decks currently.
So, if you say the top 3 decks, what do you say right now?
Oh, it's really tough. I can't really rank them. Like, obviously, just from my experience, I would put Chandra as the best one. And then I think it might be that, like, Teferi or Angrath come afterwards. And I think the green-white Huatli deck has some legs. But then again, we also have the Kambal deck, which I haven't played enough yet to say how good it is. And I also haven't played enough with Teferi yet to actually give it, like, an accurate stamp of appreciation.
Still, it sounds fantastic. I mean, if you're talking about a clear sort of fun police style deck in the mono red aggro, and then other decks that are sort of fighting for their position underneath that sounds like the beginning of a healthy format. I mean, that's where Standard tends to begin after a new card set is released. You have the aggressive decks, which are slowly but surely taken over by well-tuned, well-built, later lists. So, I mean, I think there's every reason to be optimistic about the future of Brawl at the moment.
It was also, like, when we had the first start with the real Brawl Baral deck, then it was fairly obvious after a few leaks that this deck was absolutely insane. So, it's quite a nice change that, or a good sign that when you play for about 4 days now, that if you haven't found something that oppressive, or you really feel like you have to play a certain deck to be ahead, that the metagame is going to shape out very broad.
Yeah, I think that's what's going to happen. Or I hope that's what's going to happen.
Well, obviously, we'll be keeping a close eye on how things progress in the coming days and weeks in the Brawl format. And again, all of the lists that we've talked about today, whether we've referenced them obliquely or talked about them in depth, you're going to be able to find all those lists linked through the show notes of this specific episode, which, of course, you can find on our website, stacking60s.net. And we're actually very keen to hear from you. We want to know which decks that we've talked about that you'd like to hear more about, or that you think that we should perhaps focus on a little more, or maybe something that we've missed altogether. What have you been playing with in Brawl? Maybe there's a list that you'd like to share with the Brawl community with this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Stacking60s@gmail.com is the best way to get in touch with us, or there's the contact form on our website. But we're really, really keen to hear from you as to what your thoughts on this initial stage of this new Brawl format are.
I've received community lists over the stream. I've actually played some of them. It's always great to hear from other players, knowing what they play, because, we're only 3 players. How are we going to figure out all of the decks, especially since Riley is stuck playing Ariel all the time?
We're 2 players in the Knights deck.
But, if Knights is good, we're going to be the
we
first
will know,
to know.
Yeah. If Knights is tier 1, we're going to get it.
You'll hear it here first. Well, speaking of people getting in touch, of course, we do tend to get emails every week. Stacking60s@gmail.com, the best way to do it. And we do love to read these ones out. So with that in mind, Jamin, let's open up that mailbag.
You've got mail.
Welcome to Jamin's Mailbag, where I, Jamin, will read out your mail. This week, Leo wrote us again, and he says, "Hi everybody, I've recently been playing a lot of MTG Arena, and I've been having a jolly old time. I think it's still pretty hard to play Constructed due to the economy, especially getting 4 of any important card, mostly mythics, is difficult. Don't you think that with this situation, Brawl would be amazing for a Magic the Gathering arena? How likely do you think it is that they'll implement it? Have you been playing Magic the Gathering arena at all? Please continue making awesome content. Best regards, Leo.
Thanks so much, Leo, an exalted patron of ours. He's one of our OG proper real old guard supporters, and we're very privileged to have him as one of our patrons and supporters of the show. So thanks so much for getting in touch. If you'd like your email read out just like Leo's, stacking60s@gmail.com is the best way to do that. I've played a lot of MTG Arena. I was lucky enough to get a beta key somehow or other. I don't know how I managed to get that one early on in the piece.
You got lucky, I guess.
I got very lucky, and I really like it. I know that it's got its critics because, hey, you know, Magic playing nerds love to complain about stuff. But I really like Arena's UI. I really like how it looks. I like the silly sound effects and the roars and the stomps and the all that sort of stuff. But I have to say, I really agree with Leo's point about card availability. They're still working on ironing out the kinks in the MTG Arena economy, and until that happens, like, Brawl is going to be a fantastic way, or would be a fantastic way, for people to get use out of all the, the weird one-offs that they pick up while they're building their collections.
I actually can't say too much about MTG Arena because, I started it, I tried building a deck and I couldn't do it, and then I closed it and played a draft on Modo.
just straight in the too hard basket?
Yeah, it really was too hard for me to understand. So
it was too hard to understand. Oh, interesting. No, I've never touched anything with Arena, and which is quite understandable because, as a Magic player, you split your time in Magic real life and online anyway, and then splitting online with Magic Online and Arena just doesn't work.
I think for Toffel and me, Magic Online is definitely the choice over Arena just because of the tournaments we play or the style of play we like.
Yeah, also the amount of information and reasonability. We play Magic Online, well, okay, I guess you play Magic Online for profit and streaming, and I play Magic Online mostly for testing for events, and I don't think that my MTG Arena career would be very decisive on that part. So
imagine being asked wow, how's your testing for the PT going? Well, I'm 13-2 in Magic Arena drafts.
Yeah, I'm just missing my third history, so...
Yeah, but if anyone wants to just play casually, I think Arena is going to be a great outlet from what I've seen.
I don't even think it's casually, dude. I think it's just going to be a really good way to play new formats like Standard and Draft when that eventually gets going. I think it's totally fine. I think it gets a lot of flack, again, because people love to complain, but I don't think it's as bad as all that. I also don't think Magic Online is as bad as all that, so maybe I'm the wrong person to talk to about this. But, I mean, if we answer Leo's point here, I mean, even if you're not that familiar with Arena, you will understand that there are definitely card availability issues, and there are issues with the overall economy and collections and building and maintaining a collection. And for that reason alone, I mean, we've talked about Brawl, and one of the reasons that it's so good is because you can put underused cards to some kind of use. This is definitely the case with MTG. Regardless of what your involvement level is with the program, I'm sure you guys agree that implementing Brawl in MTG Arena would be a fantastic move.
Actually, playing Brawl on Magic Online has made me feel like having a collection again. As I said, you switch out the single cards in your deck, it actually makes me feel casual again. So I think it's essential to be on Arena because that's just gonna feel very natural to the way you build your collection there. And
dude, imagine this. Imagine you can play other card games, other digital card games, online card games. You can play them on on a mobile device. You can play them on an iPad or on your phone or whatever else like that. And it's incredible. You're sitting and waiting for a bus, or you're sitting and waiting in the doctor's waiting room, or whatever else, and you can just play a game of Hearthstone, and because it'll only take 10 minutes, and that it's not the end of the world if it you have to close the app quickly or whatever. Imagine sitting somewhere where you've got 5 or 10 minutes to kill and just being able to play a game of Brawl. There's no sideboarding. You're not going to be there for 50 minutes grinding out a Teferi control mirror. You can just play a game and have fun. I mean, that's just all upside. I'd love to see Brawl implemented on MTG Arena.
The problem with this whole upside thing is, from their point of view, it doesn't give them anything really. People won't play specifically Arena to play Brawl. Standard is way more favorable as a standard format across all the human beings playing Magic, as the same as Draft. I guess they split fairly heavily. Like some people say, like I play Constructed, some people say I play Draft, so they have to offer both. But as a company, I don't think they have the need to implement this, because at the end they want to sell cards, booster packs, earn something, and Brawl, although for us would be like a cool thing, I think it's just fairly far away.
I don't know. Maybe I can imagine people like buying product for Brawl, but like I also have no idea. I just don't play Arena.
But I mean, you see what you're saying. Like Brawl is nice because you have your collection from a few drafts, from a few boosters you open. You don't need to spend money on stuff you're collecting. It's a nice way to just start. So it's kind of a way that people don't spend as much as when they would play Standard.
But I think any way to drive traffic to your program is good for Wizards. So I think implementing Brawl is still a good idea, but I'm not a master of economy, so...
But once you offer Brawl, people say, like, I could play Standard, but I can also play Brawl. I mean, I don't need all
But the two aren't mutually exclusive, and playing one tends to lead you to want to play the other.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but I would say, like, if people come, like, and say, I can either play Standard, which costs, I think they estimated around $110 for a mono green deck to buy in boosters, or play Brawl, where I pay $20 for a reasonable deck, then it's kind of a obvious choice.
Well, I don't know. I very much hope that Brawl does get implemented in MTG Arena, but I mean, I can see what you're saying, Toffel, about it not necessarily being like a financial priority for WotC, but I don't know. I still think it'd be sweet, and it'd offer something very cool and worthwhile to players.
Like, in the end, I hope everybody gets what they want. Like, so if I would choose if Brawl should be on Magic Arena, then I would obviously choose to implement it, but I don't think this is going to happen in the near future, and I just don't see why they should do it. And if you want to play Brawl, you probably have to remain for real life tournaments, your local community, or Magic Online for that matter. Like, I would focus my strength much more on bringing Brawl Challenge back on Magic Online than trying to go to Arena.
Yes, well, that's definitely something we need to get across at some point, but it's not going to be today. We are almost out of time. Thanks so much, Leo, for getting in touch. And again, if you'd like your mail read out on the show, stacking60s@gmail.com is the best way to make that happen. But as I say, we are just about out of time, so it is time to wrap things up. Thanks so much for listening to another episode of Stacking Sixties, the Brawl podcast. It's been great to hang out with you this week, as it is, of course, every week. A couple of housekeeping things to close out the show. Stacking60s.net is where you'll find everything you need to know about the podcast. You can find previous episodes there, links to deck lists, our YouTube channel with all the silly stuff that we put up there if you want to see Toffel tearing his throat out after eating not even a teaspoon of Tabasco sauce, really. old Tabasco Toffel there. That was a true joy. And of course, you can get in touch with the show at stacking60s@gmail.com or via Twitter at Stacking60s. You can follow us all individually on Twitter as well. We also have a Patreon. This show is supported by a horde of loyal and very much appreciated patrons who all chip in. The minimum is $1 a week, $1 a show, essentially, $1 an episode. And for doing so, you get a range of excellent benefits, including automatic entrance into all of our contests. And we are just about to resolve one of those contests right here and right now. For the first episode of every month, we give away a pool of boosters and that have been collected over the month of us, well, generally making really dumb bets with each other, essentially. And this month, for the month of May, I should say, for last month, it was 30 boosters. 30 boosters we're giving away this
that's
week.
Nearly a box.
It's nearly an entire box.
And fun fact, none of those came from me.
Are you joking?
No. I didn't.
So there was 10...
Lucky Toffel.
Lucky Tabasco Toffel. So there was 10... There were 10 because Jamin and I were beaten by you in the Marshmallow Eating Challenge.
Yeah, then there were from the mana base.
You mean from the ugliest swamp mana bases, and then I put 15 in to bribe you into eating a teaspoon of Tabasco, which was definitely worth it. But now I'm regretting not having punished you.
I still don't see where it's worth it for me. So
Well, we produced a quality bit of relatable content. It was fantastic. But
I actually got personal messages saying like, "You better eat this. I want more boosters."
Well, so I guess in a way, some of the boosters did come from you. In a roundabout sort of way. I mean, you did contribute to that thing that, Jamin.
Yes.
Let's really get him in June. Let's really, really get him.
I mean, you have to do something that is actually like a challenge, like.
Do you know what we should have? A lifting things off a tall shelf challenge.
Actually, Riley, you still have to do something that I would do, as far as I know. Because in the YouTube video, Riley promised doing something that I would also do.
Look, we don't have time to go over this. Things were said. Who knows who knows who said what, really.
I will sign something amazing.
Look, guys, you know what? You're distracting us from what we came here to do, which is give away 30 boosters to a patron. I'm trying to be respectful of the listeners and the promise we made to them. So if we could just sort of, move on, keep the show going, keep the flow up, and let's get to it. So
like,
we
Jamin,
have
do you
13
like to go like
patrons. And you know what? I can just mute the channels that you two are talking on when I'm editing this show, so I don't even mind what you guys say. We have 13 patrons. 13 patrons at the moment, and I have a D20 in my hand right here. I'm trying to make it make some noise, but... Well, that was me dropping it on the table, so maybe you heard that.
Done.
We're going to roll it up, and we're going to see which one of our 13 patrons is going to be the lucky one to take home 30 boosters. Now, I have double-checked all of these patrons, and none of them... Toffel. He's always trying to sneak his way into it, but don't worry. I'm pretty sure. I know your address in Berlin, so unless you've set up some sort of like PO box in Spain or something, I think we're going to be golden here. But anyway, let's get to it.
Would you say that's impossible?
Okay, whoever's going to win this is now going to be under a particularly microscopic amount of scrutiny. Yeah. We will see. Anyway. Let's go. One of our 13 patrons is going to be very lucky and win 30 boosters. Let's get to it.
Come on, Seralf Toffelin.
Is number 18, which maybe is a win for another week. Here we go. Try again. All right, fell off the table. It's number 13.
Which
means it is Steve Bickle. Congratulations, Steve. You've just won yourself almost a box. I feel like it would have been a more compelling context if we had actually just said we're giving away a box. But it's too late. You know what? We can't go back and change it now. Steve Bickle, congratulations, Steve-O. You've snagged yourself 30 boosters. 10 draft sets. Not so bad.
Jesus, 30 boosters.
Yeah, that's so good.
I should really enter this.
No. And I'm gonna be doing my due. I actually know. I know Steve Bickle from way back, so I know that he's been following. I don't know, like when I streamed years ago, he was watching my stream back then, so I know this guy's legit. Unless Toffel, this is the longest con.
Oh, it's the longest ever, yeah.
In any case, Steve Bickle has just won 30 boosters by jumping on our Patreon and pledging as one of the supporters of the show. Given that there are only 13, and given that we give away, well, the smallest amount of boosters we've given away at the end of a month was 20, you've got pretty good odds of taking home a nice big fat payday. If you want to jump on our Patreon and support us for as little as $1 an episode, you'll go into the draw to win the monthly booster giveaway bonanza. I do very strongly suggest you do that. And having said that, my opinion is rather biased because obviously I want to make those fat stacks of cash with you signing up to Patreon. But all the same, it's, you stand to gain something as well. That is just about that. We are going to give away 5 more boosters right now, just as we do every week with Toffel's Tweet. Every week we give away 5 boosters thanks to the competition Toffel's Tweet. You don't need to be a member of our Patreon to do this. All you need to do, jump on Twitter, tweet anything with the hashtag Toffel's Tweet, and if Toffel reads out your tweet, then you win 5 boosters. Simple as that. Toffel, take it away.
Toffel's Tweet. Incoming. All right. Toffel's Tweet.
One day we'll get a new jingle, but it is not this day.
No, I love it. It grown on me, right? It grown on me.
Like a tumor.
So this week's Toffel's Tweet comes from 0 degree Ken Boo.
That's convenient.
I think I pronounced that correctly. And he wrote a little story in a tweet, and it goes like this. My friend.
Should we actually voice act that maybe? Like having two?
Okay, okay, so I'm me, obviously.
Riley's the narrator.
Yeah, Riley's the narrator, and you're my friend.
Yes. Sylvan Awakening is not a good card in this deck.
20 minutes later.
Casting Sylvan Awaiting.
I don't know why we brought up Sylvan Awakening if the card is casting is Sylvan Waiting.
Cast Awakening. Swing for 28.
Yeah. I lied. It's good.
God,
I love this format.
Yes. Actually,
wow, that was like a whole play.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was sort of a comedy and a tragedy.